Okay, so this is going to be fun and enjoyable. I have the chance to sit down with my former boss and let him tell some stories. And this is going to be awesome, so long as none of the stories have to do with me.
I hope they all have to do.
I hope he didn't come here and go, I have prepared a document of everything that I wanted to say while you worked at GBN, because I don't know if I can listen to it. I'm scared. Don, I'm thankful you're here.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate you and the work that you do. And I also know you to be genuinely funny. It takes a skill to have that just natural humor come out. You're very witty. I often will talk to Dad about conversations we've had, and he says, "You said that to him?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "He said that to you?" And yeah. I said, "Don and I just love to tease back and forth, and I enjoy having you around. And I love that we have a chance to have you on this podcast where we just kind of sit back and tell some stories about what's happened to you." So essentially, the basis of this podcast is from Ecclesiastes. There's a time to laugh, and the idea that it's okay to look at what's being said. And I know, because I've heard some of them throughout the years that we've known each other, but I know for a fact a preacher who travels as much as you have traveled and a preacher who has been preaching as long as you have been preaching probably has more than a few stories, but there's probably a lot of stories you won't go on record, and we get that. And so that's not what we're asking you to do. But what are some stories that kind of come to your mind that you'd like to tell us today?
Well, since you said you did not want them to be about you, then you killed everything on my list. So
I knew it.
We can just stop right now.
I'll leave.
My sense of humor is more dry and a little sarcastic, and so
same.
A lot of times people don't get me.
Yes.
And I realized that some of the guys at GBN, after a while, they figured me out. But in the beginning, they would think, we can't believe he's really thinking that. And then they realize, oh, he doesn't mean that. He means just the opposite. But trying to think of specific stories after traveling for 20 years, so many things have happened. Trying to call them to mind is more challenging. But one I've actually shared many times happened a year or two ago. Since I have been in the wheelchair, I have to take a lot of medicines. I have muscle relaxers and things for pain. And one of the chief side effects is they make me drowsy. And so to offset that, I've tried to lower the medication, and well, then the pain is higher. And so I up the medication, the pain goes away, but then you're sleepy. So I started taking these little 5-hour energy drinks, and every morning when I get up, I'll take one, and it kind of knocks the haze away. It wakes me up, probably like some people with their coffee. But we were driving on one trip, and I'm driving the van with the hand controls. And so I've got the steering wheel in one, I've got the hand control in the other, and I was getting drowsy. So I keep 5-hour energy drinks in the door. So I reached over and I got one, and I handed it to Sherry because it's got that little plastic thing around the top. And how do you do that while you're trying to juggle and drive with your hands? So I handed it to Sherry and I said, "Would you open this for me?" And so I just meant take the plastic thing off. Well, to be extra helpful, she went ahead and took the lid off, and she handed it back to me. Well, of course, again, I'm driving, so I don't look at it. Well, I was thinking, it's been sitting in the door a long time. Surely this needs to be shaken really well. So I started shaking it, and I slung it all over me and all over the van. And for just a second, I got mad, and then it was hilarious. But you know what? It did wake me up.
Yeah,
so
that works.
That was the thing.
Probably
about
had the better effect on that.
Yeah. I was probably more awake than if I did, but just one of those things. But I've told that story many places, because every time when I finish a gospel meeting on Wednesday night, if it's within 4 hours of home, I'm going home.
Right.
And so when the brethren hear I'm going home, they say, "You're going home tonight?" And I say, "I've got a 5-hour energy drink. I'm ready to go." And I tell that story, and people get a kick out of it.
5-hour energy, 4-hour drive, and 1 hour to unload. We're all good.
There you go. That's right.
Well, okay, I'll tell you this. I think I've told you before, but I don't know if you've ever heard this. And since Adam's recording this, it's kismet to say it. But when I worked at GBN, very first year at the end, we had the performance reviews and meetings and all of that. Well, I was a very problematic school child and teenager in school. I was always getting in trouble. So every time I was called into the principal's office, it was not to be told that I was valedictorian or that I was on the honor society or anything like that. It was usually to say, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And so I heard we were having performance reviews, and I was unaware that thing existed. And I remember Adam, I believe it was, that told me we were having one, and I was like, what does that mean? And he said, well, just talk about, the year, and they'll give you anything that they need to tell you. And I just remember stressing over that, because all my experience has always been, I'm going to walk in here and they're going to tell me I'm the sorriest person they've ever met. I don't know how I'm still alive, kind of deal. And I sat down, and it was very positive. It was a typical performance review of, here's what we like, here's some things we'd maybe like to see a little bit better. But then you said something, and it cracks me up now because I know what the word means, but I didn't at the time. Don said, you bring a certain levity to the staff that I appreciate. And I remember going, what does that mean? And I just looked at him and said, thank you. No idea what it meant. So I raced back upstairs after I was dismissed from the meeting, and I went right to Adam and I said, hey, look up the word levity real quick. And so he typed it in, and it's the art or fashion of treating serious things in a lighthearted way. And I said, truer words have never been spoken. That is sure. Me to a T. And so I always think about that, because I'd never heard that word before. And so you've not only taught me a lot about the Bible, but you've taught me a lot about the dictionary too. Wow. And I really appreciate that. The things that always seem to happen to you probably come mostly on the road. Do you have anything that's happened while driving?
Of course, I've had a number of things that have happened that were not happy things or funny things per se. The 5-hour energy was on the road. Right. That was funny. But since I've been in my van, my handicap van, I had a deer run out of the woods and smack into the side of the van and beat up the van. And then I'm kind of trapped inside. What do? On that occasion, the van was still drivable. On another occasion, we were going through, I think, Nashville, and an 18-wheeler changed lanes really quickly and hit the back of the van. And of course, we had to pull over and wait. And again, I'm stuck in the van. It was damaged in such a way I couldn't get out. On another occasion, we had a tire just blow out going down the interstate. And I pulled over on the side of the road. And again, I can't get out. What do? I can't change the tire. So I called AAA. I thought, I've got AAA. We're good. So I called AAA, and they said, yeah, we'll send somebody out. It'll be about 3 hours. And I thought, 3 hours? So I had an idea. I had my phone. So I went to Facebook, and I typed in where I was, and I said, are there any members of the church around who can help me? Within a few minutes, a member of the church showed up there and helped me change my tire. Way faster than AAA. No doubt. So in the future, I'll use Brethren as my AAA.
That's right.
And he got me going. And so when you're on the road a lot, you have just a lot of strange incidents. And hotels bring all kinds of challenges. I'm almost reluctant to tell this story, but when I travel, I carry a firearm with me for protection, especially now. I'm in the wheelchair. I feel defenseless. And but this was before then. I was in a hotel room, and I had a gun with me. And I heard a ruckus, like a fight going on in the hall. And so I stepped out, and I put my gun on my side. It was not drawn. I just thought, something is wrong out here. And I stepped out into the hall, and this man who was apparently hyped up on drugs was going at it with 2 people. When he saw me, he turned and started running toward me. And I panicked. I thought he was going to get in my room, so I pulled the door closed. And then immediately I realized I just locked myself out. So I'm standing in the hall with this fella. And then I got to thinking, I've got a gun. He's going to grab it. And so I put my hand on it. I didn't pull it. I just put my hand on it to stop him from touching it. And he started screaming. Then he turned around to the other people he was initially fighting with. And at that point, I took off to go downstairs. And so I'm going down I couldn't wait on the elevator. So I started down the emergency stairs, and he started following me. So I went downstairs, and I yelled to the front desk, call 911. And then he came behind me, and they could see something wasn't right with him. So they ran in the back, closed the door, and locked it. And so I'm out there with this guy, and I start yelling to people, call 911, somebody call for help. And at that point, the man is erratic and he's screaming. I didn't know what to do. So I started trying to get him to calm down. And I said, sir, what is wrong? What is wrong? And I said, let's go outside and talk. And I got him to sit down. And he said, they're tracking me, man. They're following me. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, they put a chip in me. And I said, what? And he pulled his shirt up and he had cut marks all over his chest. I don't know if it was drugs or if he had a mental problem, but he believed that a chip had been inserted into him and he was cutting himself trying to get it out. So after a few minutes, the cops finally came. And then when the cops showed up, he jumped up and started saying, that guy's got a gun.
Of course he did.
And I said, look, I'm a preacher. I have not drawn my gun. I have a concealed carry permit. And they said, we know this guy, go up to your room and we'll tend to him. And then they took him away. So that was one of the great adventures I had in a hotel room.
I thought you were going to say, when I went down to the front desk to say, call 911, they had the sign up that said, we'll be back in a few minutes. We're assisting another guest.
Yeah. It's even worse. They were there and
then they ran from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's we were in Nashville. I was doing a gospel meeting years ago, 2018. And that was when that shooting happened at the Waffle House. And we were there. We almost stopped at that Waffle House that night to eat. It would have been before the shooting happened, but it was still weird when you realize that's where that happened. Well, then we get back from preaching the meeting that morning. Megan and Adam, he's very little. He'd just been born like 6 months ago. So he's very small. They go back to the room and the police are there. And they're looking for this killer. And they had gotten credible, advice that he was in our hotel somewhere.
Wow.
And so I'm like, what am I going to do? My wife and 6-month-old are here. And I'll go to the front desk and I said, hey, what is the plan with the police being here? He goes, I don't know. I said, what do we need to do if there's a problem? He says, go to your room. And it was just very unhelpful. Mm-hmm. And I just remember going into the room and Megan said, is everything okay? And I couldn't tell her, not immediately, because I knew what that was going to incite a panic because there's a killer on the loose and he happens to be in our hotel, they think. Well, they never found him in our hotel. So I don't know if they'd gotten bad advice or if maybe someone called and tipped them off the wrong way. But I remember thinking that was a scary moment because the hotel seems secure until it's not.
Yeah.
And I stayed at a hotel once and I'd gotten locked out. And the lady went from the front desk and she grabbed one of those little laundry bags that are plastic, and she whittled that thing through somehow and unlocked my door and was able to get in.
Wow.
And I thought, I didn't even know that was possible.
Wow.
And she said, yeah, you can do that if you've got the key. And so I thought, well, I don't feel safe then. If you can just do that, anytime can you do that?
Wow.
So it's certainly odd, and you don't always feel as safe as you think you're going to feel in those places, even though they seem secure.
Wayne, that's going to be the great thing being in a camper like that.
That's right.
You won't,
carrying my house with me.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right.
Absolutely.
We were traveling one time. This is years ago, and there was, we didn't have cell phone back then, so this was long ago and early in our preaching and early in our marriage. We were traveling, and so we were coming up through North Georgia, and headed to Gatlinburg, I think, or something like that for a weekend. And as we were trying to go from place to place, trying to find a hotel or a room somewhere, something like that. And it was one of those weekends that I should have called ahead, made a reservation, didn't do that. Learned valuable lesson, of course, hard way. But we get there, we get in this one location. I can't even, to this day, I can't tell you where it's at exactly. We didn't stay, but we get there and, it's kind of one of those roadside inns and they've got 6 rooms, small place or something. I was getting desperate. I'm trying to find something, and it was getting late. I was tired. And so I knew the next day I had reservations. We were good. So this was something just to get us on the way, And so I thought we'd be all right. But anyway, so I go up to the desk. He says, well, all of our regular rooms are taken and everything. I said, well, do you know of anything in the area? I said, I'm really just trying to find. I said, I don't even know where I'm at, And he said, well, I got this room around back if you want to check it out. I'm like, I'm intrigued. Okay.
Who said that? No one said that.
Let me take a look, And so I did. I went around the corner and looked at it. And so Cindy filed in behind me. She thought we were going on to the room and everything. I said, he's going to show us a possible room. And that's all I said, or whatever. And so we get around the corner and there is like another room, and it looks like kind of an extra room that was off the side of the inn or whatever it was. And he's over there and he's like, all right, let me get this padlock off the side of it. And I said, I've seen enough. I'm good. Thank you. We're going to leave now. And we got in the car and we left.
Wow.
Sometimes you make a reservation, have a plan and a backup plan. That's
right.
what you do.
Creepy. Wow.
Yeah, that was very creepy.
Yeah.
I did a funny story. I just did a meeting recently in, I think it was in Missouri. And the brethren had told me that Brother Dave Miller had done a meeting for them. And they said that he was teasing. This little girl had a red bow in her hair, and every night she had some color bow. And so Dave would come in and he would say, if it was a red bow, he would say, I like your yellow bow. And she would say, it's not yellow, it's red. And the next night, I like your blue bow. Well, it's not blue, it's red. And he did this every time he saw her. And they said the last night of the meeting, she asked her mama a question about his sermon. She said, what did he mean by that? And she said, well, why don't you ask him? And she said, he won't know. He doesn't even know his colors. So I thought that was very fun.
Do you remember? I've got two things. One, that a listener has sent us a question. You could probably deduce who that might be. And then it's the only other guy that's in here that knows you well enough to know a story. But you remember we went to Longhorn last year and I went to set my cup down and it shattered?
Yes.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
I still have not seen that happen since or ever before that.
I was with you.
Yeah.
But you were there. That's why I thought I'd bring it up.
Yeah.
And I just remember I didn't like slam it down or anything. I just said it and it was like almost the picture I got in my mind when it happened was that what the temple, looked like when the thing rent in two.
Yeah.
Because it like cracked from the top all the way down is what it felt like.
Yeah.
And thankfully it wasn't full. It just had ice in it. But the lady came over and I thought, well, this must happen all the time. She said, I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
And so that was a unique experience because none of us had ever seen that.
When it comes to traveling and stories, nobody has more unique stories than your dad.
Oh, yeah.
He blows my mind. I remember him telling me on one occasion he got put in a hotel stories. He got put in a hotel, and I think it was one of these, a motel opens out to the parking lot. And he said there was no lock on the room. And so he called them and said, there's no lock on the door here. What do I do? Can you move me to another room? And they said, we don't have any other rooms. Yeah. And he said, what should I do? And they said, slide the dresser over in front of the door. Like, that was their solution. Put the dresser in front of the door. Wow.
Yeah.
They've worked that out a couple of times, probably, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you're in room 20, aren't you?
Yeah.
Just
the dresser
that's
becomes the door.
With the big dresser.
Yeah. That's why it's there. We didn't have one originally.
Yeah.
So I've been asked to ask you about the you went to college, didn't you incident. Do you recall what that is about?
I went to college incident. Yes. That was Adam Vaughn. I don't remember the specifics of it now, but you have to refresh my memory. I really don't, but I remember it was something along the line. Do you know the story?
I don't think I know this. I might, and if I got more context clues from the peanut gallery over there.
Yeah, I think, as I remember, I think maybe Adam had said to me, you went to college, didn't you? And he was being funny or sarcastic, and I thought he was being serious, and I was taking it as an insult, like, yeah, you went to college, you ought to know that. And well, he was making a joke, and so I got a little put out about it because what kind of smart aleck remark is that? So I'd forgotten that. Thanks for reminding me.
You said you were holding a funnel.
Holding a funnel.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if he's messing with me. That's the one thing I'm worried. I'm worried Adam's made all this up and is just baiting me.
I'm going to have to.
And for a guest surprise, we have.
he's texting. No, he really was.
Okay. Okay.
This has been fun.
We may have to hold that as a mystery to work out later, man.
We're going to have Don come back at some point and do another episode with us, and we'll get all the context clues on that. But Don, thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
I'll say this one last thing before we go, because I'm sure this has probably happened to you once or twice. We went, Adam and I, my son, Adam, to a Mexican restaurant recently, and he told me about midway through, before our food had gotten there, he goes, Daddy, I got to use the restroom. So I said, all right, let's go. So we walk right by our waitress, and I just kind of nodded like, hey, we're still here. We're heading to the restroom. But I didn't say that. Well, we come back, and the entire table has been cleared.
Oh, man.
And Adam goes, where did my drink go? Where did everything go? Well, then we're sitting there waiting. And this is, since Jonathan Burns just walked in, this is in Pulaski where this happened, right across from the Hampton. And I have to go up to somebody and say, hey, we're still here and all of our tables been cleared off. And they were just kind of like, oh, that's weird. And they didn't really say anything about it. They didn't apologize. They brought us our drinks again and another cheese dip that we had ordered. But by that point, our food was there. We weren't wanting any more cheese dip.
Wow.
And so that was one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. But when it happened, I thought, man, I wish Don were here, because I know that Don would have found a way to get my meal for free that night, because we've been together when some of the things haven't gone our way. And you have a very articulate way of just saying, this is not how it should be. And I've always appreciated that, because I always get kind of skittish at that. I'm not good at the confrontation of saying, this was not what I ordered. I need it to be better. But Adam thought that was the funniest thing, because the rest of the night he goes, they moved our cheese dip. So
if we have time for one more story. I remember you telling the story about the Mexican restaurant. When my kids were little, my daughter Lauren, we're in a Mexican restaurant. She picks up the salt. She must have been 3 years old, and she licked the top of it. And I thought, So when the waitress came over, I said, ma'am, my little girl licked the top of the salt. Well, she didn't speak the greatest English, so she just nodded her head, so I could see she wasn't understanding. So I'm thinking, how do I communicate this? So I looked at it, and I went, and I pointed at it, and she looked at me confused. So she took the salt and she went and set it on a different table and brought us their salt. And I was just like, okay, whatever. She's missed the point entirely, but I thought, well, I did due diligence.
I thought you were going to say, so I licked the top of it to show her what happened. Jesus talked about the salt that gets put onto the ground and trampled by the foot of men. I don't know that he ever would have thought that somebody would lick the top of a salt shaker. That's good stuff. That's something that all children probably would do if given the chance. Mm-hmm. Don, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Yeah. Good to be with you guys.
Wayne didn't have a choice. He had to be here, but thankful to you two for showing up.
Glad to be here.
Appreciate both you guys.
We appreciate you very much. And thankful to those of you that are listening and have watched in on this conversation. We'll be back next Tuesday with another Through Their Eyes, and then next Thursday for Did That Really Happen?